So today I want to talk about 5 divorce survival rules. Thought I would keep it simple, just go with 5 rules and look at the common things that we see here with men in divorce, the things you should be doing, the things you should not be doing. We combine those, we call them the survival rules. So your first survival rule here is going to be to file first. There are a lot of advantages to filing for divorce first. Whoever files first is the plaintiff. There's advantages to any lawsuit with being the plaintiff. The plaintiff typically in other types of lawsuits is the victim. Now, of course, in a divorce case, there's not necessarily a victim. There's just 2 people going their separate ways. But divorce cases they're litigation. It's a lawsuit. That's how Michigan law has it set up. That's how a lot of states have it set up. In other states, it's different. But here, it is a lawsuit. It's not the 2 of you consensually going your separate ways and doing some sort of uncontested thing. There's no such thing. Michigan law does not separate out contested versus uncontested divorces. So they all get started the same way. A complaint for divorce gets filed with the circuit court in the county that you live in. There's a summons issued. The summons says you're being sued. You have 21 days to respond. You know, it looks like kind of frightening stuff. You're always better to file first. Whoever's filing first is going to be the plaintiff. Plaintiff has advantages. Plaintiff will go first if there's any kind of contested court hearing, some kind of temporary hearing, like a motion hearing, an evidentiary hearing, some sort of factual thing that has to be decided about whatever it is, paying bills, custody, parenting time, temporary decisions. At those temporary hearings, the plaintiff goes first. The only reason they get to go first at the hearing is because they filed first. There's also, controlling the timeline is a thing that's involved with filing first. If I file first, I know when it's going to be filed, right? Then I know when I'm going to get the paperwork back from the court. Once I have everything back from the court, I then have 90 days to get the other person served. So I got these 3 months where I can decide when to have my spouse served, what I want them to know, and when I want them to know it. So in other words, I'm preparing for it, and they don't even know it's happening yet. That's an advantage to filing first. Also, what goes along with filing first is getting court orders signed at the beginning that can affect all kinds of different stuff. If you have children, they can affect custody, parenting time, child support numbers, get done without a hearing, without notice to you, without notice to the other person, and you don't want that going on. You can also get restraining orders done, a restraining order on property, so you could get something that basically freezes a bank account or restricts what kind of bills can be paid, what bills can't be paid, what's going to happen with savings and all sorts of other things, investments. That's a mutual restraining order, something that typically gets signed at the beginning of a divorce case. We've seen court orders that get signed at the beginning, these ex parte orders, which is just Latin for without a hearing. So ex parte order gets signed. It could bar you from your own home. I've seen people thrown out of their own home through the signing of an order, and the only reason all that got put in place, how that got into motion in the first place, is that the other person filed first. They file first, they get a court order signed, an ex parte order that throws their spouse out of the house, gives them exclusive use of the home, or dictates what bills their spouse is going to have to pay. It dictates how much child support their spouse has to pay, dictates what's going to go on with custody and parenting time and whatever else and support. So you don't want all this going on. That's the point of this. The point isn't to file and to create problems for your spouse and to be nasty and cause fighting. And the point is to file and avoid all that stuff. You want to play defense. You want to make sure that you know when it's filed. You know the timeline. There's counties, Oakland County, for example, as soon as you file, they give you 2 court hearings. So the day you file, you have notice of the first 2 court hearings that are going to happen in your divorce case. The other person doesn't even know there's a divorce filed. You already know when the hearing is. You're clearing your schedule for it. You're preparing. You're getting your documents ready. You're doing whatever. So filing first carries a lot of weight. So that's one of our first divorce survival rule is get something filed first. Second divorce survival rule is if you want something, a car, a house, an item, whatever it might be, you should keep it in your possession. There's this saying that possession is 9/10 of the law. Well, that's not really true in the United States. It's not true in Michigan. That's a rule that comes from England. But it can definitely carry some weight in a divorce case. If you own a house together, you're getting divorced, and then you decide to move out and you're living somewhere else, first of all, you've gotten another place to live. It's going to be hard in your divorce final settlement, which might happen months and months down the road. When there's children, there's a 6-month waiting period. These things can take 5 months, 8 months, even longer. During that whole process, you may get to the end and decide that you'd like to keep your house. But if you've moved out and you've long since been gone, it's going to be a lot harder to convince anybody that you're serious about wanting to keep this house. If the house is a priority, stay put, don't move out. There's a lot of other reasons not to move out, especially when you have children. But you want to hang on to things. If it's something that you want to keep and be able to be living, you want this house, you want to live there after your divorce, then you should be living there now. It gets difficult to do that later, to be moving out and then you're moving back in, whatever it is. Same thing with vehicles. If the vehicle you're driving day to day is the one that you want to end up with in the divorce case, and that's great. If it's not, it's time to switch vehicles. Maybe your wife is driving a truck that the loan is in your name only, or the loan is in both names, and you're going to want to end up keeping that vehicle. Maybe your wife can't even afford the payments on it. So you're going to want to keep that truck. You're going to want to take the vehicle that you have and make sure that that's the one that you're using. So if it's something you want, you should make sure it's in your possession. If it's personal items, if it's a motorcycle or a bicycle or personal property or furniture, whatever it is, hang on to it. Make sure that it's something in your possession, if possible. If you're still living in the same house, at that point, really everything's still in your possession. But you want to hang on to things that you are looking to keep after the divorce. It's hard to make an argument later that you wanted some vehicle when your wife's been driving it for the last year. At some point, you got to straighten all that out. Make sure that what you want to end up with is where you are now on things, and that you have the things that you want to be able to keep. So that second rule is, if you want it, keep it. If you want it, make sure it's in your possession. Our third divorce survival rule is about your attorney and about using your time wisely. You want to avoid wasting time when meeting with your attorney. You want to avoid small talk. You want to avoid nonsense. Make sure you have a list of questions prepared ahead of time. Make sure you're prepared for the meeting, right? It's the Boy Scout motto, be prepared. You want to make sure you have your thoughts about it, and you know what your priorities are and what you want to see happen out of this divorce case, whether it's custody, parenting time, a parenting time schedule, child support, division of property. Maybe it's who's going to keep the house. Maybe you want to keep the house. Maybe you'd like to see the house sold. Whatever your priorities are on those things, you want to make sure that you make those clear to your attorney, and that you make good use of your time when you're meeting with your attorney, and make sure that you're paying attention when you're meeting with your attorney. A lot of people, that they're staring at their phone half the time. They're sort of half listening, and they've paid for our time. They're here. They're paying for a meeting. It's a business meeting. Take notes. Pay attention. Ask questions. Make sure you understand what we're doing, what advice we're giving, why we're giving that advice, and make sure that you're clear about what your priorities are, what you want to see happen, what your objectives are. So avoid wasting time when you're meeting with your attorney. That can be a big problem. It's a good survival tip with divorce courts, with divorce cases in general. And then our fourth survival rule for divorce is regarding temporary orders. Basically, this idea is that temporary orders become permanent. So avoid what you agree to on a temporary basis, because it can end up being what you're stuck with. People will get talked into temporary things with their kids. They'll do some parenting time schedule, say, well, we'll try this for now. I'll see if we can make this work. It's really not what I want, but let's go ahead and I'll do every other weekend, and then I'll do more. I'll be able to do half the time with the kids later. It won't happen. These temporary agreements have a way of becoming permanent, because they start to look like, well, this is working and everybody's happy with it, right? And people don't believe that you're not happy with it. You agreed to it. Now you've been doing it for 6 months because there's a waiting period, and it's been going on and on and on. So avoid making temporary agreements that you really are not, that you don't agree to, things that just aren't reasonable, aren't fair. It's too much of a compromise. You've gone too far. If you want shared custody and you want a lot of time with your kids, then don't agree to every other weekend. If you want the house sold ultimately in your divorce case, then don't agree to, letting your wife keep it when maybe she can't even afford to buy you out. You want to keep an eye on all those things. Avoid these temporary agreements. If you only have so much money per month that can go towards the bills, then avoid making an agreement that's going to have you paying way too much for the bills. You need to make sure you know where you stand, make sure you know your budget, know what you can afford on a monthly basis before you agree to some temporary amount, a temporary child support order, a temporary number that you can't live with and are not going to be able to do. The temporary orders have a way of definitely becoming more permanent. They have a way of paving the path towards what's going to ultimately be the agreement. And if you've been doing one thing for 6-8 months as far as custody and parenting time, it's not going to make sense to change all that, and you're going to end up losing just because you agreed to something that really you shouldn't have agreed to in the first place. So that's another survival tip. Another idea is watch out for temporary orders. They have a way of becoming permanent. And then our fifth one, our final one is watch what you say to your spouse during the divorce case. Once a divorce case has been filed, especially if you're living together, you're going to have conversations, you're going to have discussions together, and you want to be careful what you say. You don't want to commit to things. It's easy to your wife runs something by you as far as a settlement proposal or some idea about the house or the kids or whatever it is, and it sounds good, and you think, okay, well, that makes sense. Yeah, I can agree to that. Avoid being so quick to say yes. Maybe you don't have all the information, you don't have all the facts, and if you've agreed to it and then later you find out more details about something, now you're the bad guy. Now you're just backing out on an agreement that you had when really you did not have all the information, should never have made an agreement in the first place. So avoid these things. Avoid the statements that are going to get you in trouble. Watch what you say and be careful when you're living together, especially. A lot of situations come up where you're going to say the wrong thing, or you're going to agree to something that you really didn't mean to agree to, or maybe you didn't even understand the entire implication of. Be careful what you say. Be careful what you put in emails. Be careful what you text to your spouse. Watch out what you're doing with social media and posting on social media. You shouldn't even be on social media, especially during a divorce. You just want to avoid that altogether. No good will ever come of that. It will only cause you trouble. So don't give your wife evidence. Don't give her reason to think that you're going to do one thing and then you want another. Now she's upset. Now she's mad at you, because ultimately these cases are settled out of court. You got to reach an agreement. So you don't need to be upsetting your spouse with things you could have avoided and things you could have not done in the first place. Now they're upset with you. Now it's making it harder to settle your divorce case. So watch out. Make sure you keep information to yourself. Keep things, there's no reason to say a lot of this stuff. Avoid the bragging. Avoid discussing your raise. Avoid discussing things unless it's absolutely necessary. And you got to watch your back. There's litigation pending. The person that's in the lawsuit is living down the hall from you potentially. It's a weird thing, but you know that, and you have to be careful about it, and you want to watch what you're doing going into it. You don't want to regret things later. So hopefully that helps. Those are some ideas on divorce survival rules. That's at least our top 5, and hopefully that helps. Thanks.